I'm Amanda Fancy. I'm the dealer owner of Gauss Home Hardware and Furniture. We've been at this location for about a year. We started in 1848, way back when. This is our 5th location, so we've never have left the town limits. So we're looking to build this location. We had lots of opportunity to potentially look at outside of the town limits, but it was really key for us to be and continue to be a growing business in Bridgewater. Bridgewater, Nova Scotia is unique. We have a beautiful countryside. Our town is 7,500 people, but then, our customer reach is about 45,000. So, we're talking about lots of small communities, hidden treasures. There's huge opportunity here, and I think that it's certainly worthwhile to make the visit, make the call, do some inquiring, because it certainly is somewhere where I think there would be some strong investment opportunities for sure.
My name is Joey Richard. I come from Quebec, Montreal. I've studied opera at the Montreal Conservatoire of Music, so this is where I've learned about Italian, the language, and the food. And my passion just became bigger and bigger for food. I've been cooking for 20 years, almost. I opened a family business, but the only thing I forgot is that my family is still in Montreal, so I'm like, I'm trying. I make new friends. I'm building this thing, but it is a family business here. My chef is like my brother. His wife is like my sister. So I recreated a family environment. We do the real recipes, starting from the real ingredients, and for Italian food, what the secret is. Few ingredients and very fresh. So each recipe would be like 3-4 ingredients maximum. But it's just the best ingredients and makes it so delicious. If you think that it's impossible to have your own business, I'm the living proof that it is possible. People want us to thrive. We work together. So everybody helps each other. If you want to be part of a community, it is the community to be part of.
My name is Joel Holland. I'm the owner and operator of Manitou Athletics. I found the opportunity, started this gym in my parents' garage, and now we are currently in an 8,600 square foot facility. A lot of people come here because of the community. The things that we offer here are different than a normal gym. It's an open atmosphere where you come in, the music's played over the loudspeakers, not in your ears. You don't put earbuds in and just walk around from one machine to the other. You focus on yourself, but at the same time you get to meet new people. We have 3 floors, which we do CrossFit, boot camps, athletic training, and personal training. We have so many other businesses that are growing our economy and feeding into it becoming more populated, a place where people actually stay as opposed to leave. We're growing, we're getting bigger, and a lot of people are on the same push to become a better Bridgewater. I love this place. It's my home, and there is no other place that I would want my business to be.
I'm Amanda Fancy. I'm the dealer owner of Gauss Home Hardware and Furniture. We've been at this location for about a year. We started in 1848, way back when. This is our 5th location, so we've never have left the town limits. So when we're looking to build this location, we had lots of opportunity to potentially look at outside of the town limits, but it was really key for us to be and continue to be a growing business in Bridgewater. Bridgewater, Nova Scotia is unique. We have a beautiful countryside. Our town is 7,500 people, but then, our customer reach is about 45,000. So, we're talking about lots of small communities, hidden treasures. There's huge opportunity here, and I think that it's certainly worthwhile to make the visit, make the call, do some inquiring, because it certainly is somewhere where I think there would be some strong investment opportunities for sure.
All right, good evening, everyone, and I will call this regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council to order. And just a reminder, the town of Bridgewater is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and it is our privilege to be here. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated? Deputy Mayor Fragier, seconded by Councillor Tanner. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. And are there any announcements from members of council for any upcoming events? Deputy Mayor.
I'll just mention tomorrow's the town's official birthday, 125. So we're going to, commemorate that being at Gauss tomorrow for some cake at 12:15. Everybody's welcome to join us. And then prior to that, we have the South Shore Stamp group is going to be at Canada Post at around 11 for the pictorial cancellation, I believe. So that's at 11 if anybody wants to join us.
Yeah, it's exciting. So I know I'll be at both. I'm not going to miss cake, so for sure it'll be with Gauss. So yeah, everyone's welcome. There's events going on, well, they're going to be going on all year, but of course we've got the Frost Fair, the second weekend of it happening coming up this weekend, and Bridgewater Transit is free again. My wife and I took the bus to the Frost Fair on Saturday, and I mean, if you've not taken Bridgewater Transit, it's always quite remarkable, I find, because it's like a little community. It's never quiet on the bus. There's always people talking to each other. And I think as soon as you get on, you're just included in the conversation, and the drivers are talking to the passengers. Anyway, it was great. We had a great conversation with people on the way there, and another one on the way back, and a great time at the event. So again, the Kinsman is sponsoring the free transit on Saturday. So if you've never tried it, it's a great low-risk opportunity to hop on and take that to the LCLC. Lobster crawl is still happening around South Shore, so there's lots of events. There's another lobster crawl in town, I believe, this weekend on Saturday. So there was one last Saturday as well. That started at Fancy Pants and worked its way along King Street. I think there was more than a dozen people that participated in that, so there's another one coming up this Saturday. And lots of lobster options, not just across Bridgewater, but across the whole South Shore. So lots of opportunity to travel around and check that out. Any other announcements from members of council?
Just to add to that with the lobster, the Friends of the Des Brisay Museum are selling tickets for the luncheon on February 17th. I still believe there's tickets you can take out or dine in. So check that out on their website to buy a ticket if you like lobster chowder.
Awesome. Great. All right. Then we will move along to our presentation to Anne Jodry, the 2023 Town of Bridgewater Provincial Volunteer. I know it's 2024, but after a little bit of a delay, we are just absolutely thrilled to recognize Anne Jodrey here in council chambers. And so I'd ask Anne if she'd like to come up, and Deputy Mayor Fagier is going to read a little bit
Sure.
about that, what Anne's done, and if anyone wants to come and take a picture, you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
You get to stand awkwardly at the front now.
So Anne has been an amazing volunteer for the Health Service Foundation of the South Shore for the past 6 years, and her volunteering with the hospital certainly predates this. She's also volunteered with the church for decades, where she helps others. She's helped with many, many fundraisers and served on numerous committees. Anne is a volunteer who truly cares about the cause she is supporting and the people who she interacts with. Bridgewater and the South Shore as a whole are better thanks to Anne Jodrey's considerable volunteer efforts. Anne achieves this tonight, so we all from here, council, congratulations, Anne.
Thank you very much.
Please accept this on behalf of the community and with our debt of gratitude for all that you do.
Thank you very much. And I'm really excited because we start on February 14th, and I've done everything I possibly do for the radiothon. So I'll be up and about.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Right.
Wonderful.
Thank
Did
you.
you get that photo? You're good?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Yes, and so, yes, big round of applause. Those volunteer hours are priceless to the community and all the people that you help, so thank you. And good, thanks for reminding that the Radiothon for Health Services Foundation is this Wednesday, Valentine's Day. This is extremely important to our community. Obviously, that hospital serves the larger region and provides incredible services to everyone, but it cannot happen without the Radiothon and the countless volunteers who help put that together. So thank you again, Anne, for that. Okay, we're down to our delegations, and we have a representative here from Lunenburg County Wheels to make a funding request. All right, just right down in the middle there, perfect. Thank you.
Right here. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here this evening. I am Deborah Featherby. I am the very new head of fundraising for the Lunenburg County Wheels. Jerome Tanner was planning on being here tonight, but he has had to send his regrets. My purpose in being here is to give you information, bring you up to date on a service that is provided within your town, and of course, to ask for financial support. That's the bottom line. Now, Lunenburg County Wheels grew out of Senior Wheels, which provided an invaluable service within the town, providing transportation for seniors and those with mobility issues. The board saw that there was a greater need within the town for people not just with mobility issues, with vision issues, with hearing issues, but those who had the need of transportation but could not afford it. Those who were not on transit routes or whose appointments did not match bus times. Because you have an excellent transit system within town, but it doesn't always meet the needs of some of the people within the town. There are also those within town who cannot afford to take the transit system or a taxi. The board members also knew that not only within the town of Bridgewater, but within the rural areas, there was a great need for transportation. And out of that vision came Lunenburg County Wheels, with a view to not only providing service within the town, but providing service within the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, within the towns of Mahone Bay and Lunenburg, all of western Lunenburg County. Fortunately, they had great support from the federal and provincial governments and were given lovely grants to purchase 4 new vans. But with many things that happened because of the pandemic, you know what supply issues are like, we're still waiting for the 4 new vans. Hopefully 2 of them will be available the end of this month and 2 more the end of March. That's put us a year behind. But be that as it may, we will get going. The Lunenburg County Wheels provides a service not only within the town, but We expanded into the New Jersey and surrounding areas in the spring of 2023 and provided a service for a lot of people in rural areas who, especially seniors. Seniors represent about 70% of our ridership right now. And a lot of them are nervous drivers. They don't want to leave their little local area. They don't like driving in the winter, or because of vision issues or mobility issues, they aren't allowed to drive. So they depend on the neighbors, the children, who has to sometimes, they may have to take time off work in order to take Graham to her appointment with the eye doctor. That really impacts negatively on their self-esteem, their self-worth, their feeling of independence. When you have to depend on somebody else to take you to get your groceries or to go visit Aunt Edna down the road or whatever the situation may be. Bridgewater area is the primary focus for Lunenburg County Wheels. We have service within the town 5 days a week, and some days we have currently a minivan or minibus and a van, and some days both of those vehicles are in use within the town. It provides that service for those who need wheelchair assistance, and our new vans will all have wheelchair access, and they will be outfitted so that even if you have a mobility issue, you're on crutches, you have a cane, you will have a walker, you will be able to access the van. Our drivers are trained to help anyone with mobility issues, and of course how to get the wheelchairs into the van. They also are trained to help you if you've gone for groceries and you're coming out with your 8 bags of groceries in hand. They will help you load those onto you or into the van, and they will help to get them out. It is door-to-door service, so that if you're living at the very end of Pine Street, you can access service by calling and reserving your ride. We do encourage people to reserve the rides because it gets very dicey. If you wait until the very last minute, you may not be able to get the ride that you want. It improves their ability to get out to socialize, which is so important for their sense of well-being, their mental health. They can get out to go shopping when they want to do it. And a lot of seniors like to go out early in the morning. They're up at 5:30, they have breakfast by 6, they need to get out the door and want to get shopping. And we can do that for them. We can get them to the stores early in the morning. We can get them directly to their doctor's appointment, to their hospital appointment. We can get them to visit their relatives, their friends, their grandchildren down the road. These are all things that make for a healthy community. When you have people who are happy, who are well-adjusted, whose mental health is good, and if your mental health is good, your physical health is usually better. It's when you can't get out. You don't feel that you are of any use to anybody because you can't do this on your own or that on your own. That's when your physical health tends to decline quite rapidly. Now, of course, with all of this comes expenses. And when you're putting 6 vehicles on the road, a lot of expense. We still have a lot of volunteer drivers, which really helps us when we're looking at our budgets, looking at how much it's going to cost to pay people. But we have to have an office and an office manager and a dispatcher. Scotia Business took our phone calls for a long time, but with 6 vehicles, we have to have somebody who can multitask, who can be flexible, who knows that if they have booked somebody in Colton to get a ride at 8 o'clock in the morning and somebody from Wenzel's Lake calls and says, can you pick me up at 8:30, that is doable. If you have somebody over on Pine Street who needs a ride at 8 o'clock and somebody on St. Philip Street who needs a ride at 8 o'clock, you've got to know how to juggle that, how to make that happen. So we have to have those employees. We have to license, insure, maintain, clean the vehicles. And on these roads, that's really difficult to do. So all of those things cost money. We have good grants from the federal government and the provincial government, as I said, to purchase the vans. We have a good grant from the municipality of the District of Lunenburg to help keep our fares low. So that if you want to go from point A to point B in Bridgewater, it's going to cost you $2.50. If you want the bus to pick you up in 2 hours, a return trip is going to cost you $5. If you live out in the more rural areas, if you're going under 10 kilometers, it's going to cost you $5 for one way, $7.50 for return. If it's farther than 10 kilometers, it's going to be $7.50 and $15. I feel like taking a bus when I come to Bridgewater. It's cheaper than running my car. And for a lot of people, it makes sense, especially for people who don't like winter driving at all. Put your car away, take the bus. It's great. But for those of us who are on the board, and we are all volunteers, we have to find that money, and they like me to do that. It's like, wow. We also get a grant from United Way, and that is to pay the fares for people who are unable to do so. With the cost of everything today, the cost of living has become unmanageable for a lot of people who don't have a way to get to work, who don't have a way to go not just grocery shopping, but to the food bank, to the community pantries. They don't have a way to get there. They are suffering. And we want to provide a service for them. So United Way has given us a grant so that those people are not charged anything if they have a need. We also have donations from individuals. We have donations from service groups like the Lions Clubs, both in Bridgewater and New Jersey, have donated money. The Hospital Auxiliary has donated money. I'm collecting a list of anyone I think might have money. Anybody here rich? No, darn. But we will be hitting up a lot of people for money. And even if it's $10, you put enough $10 together and you've got some money to work with. Because we want to see this succeed. We want to be able to, we will be dedicating one van only to Bridgewater. The rest will do service in the rural areas as they are needed. So that is my pitch. I hope you don't ask the hard questions. That was Jerome's part. Was supposed to be to answer the hard questions. But I do have some facts and figures. I've sent some along to you. But if you have any questions, please ask, and I'll try to answer.
Perfect. Thank you, Deborah. Any questions from members of council? Councilor Tanner.
To Deborah, under the fares section of the budget for 23-24, what does that represent? Is that what the expected fares from each of those territory areas?
Yes, yes.
So why would Bridgewater be 3-4 times more from a fare perspective?
The seniors, especially in Bridgewater, were used to having senior wheels. So this is normal for them.
Okay.
We are still having to do a fairly big ad campaign because people in the surrounding areas are still like, what's this Lunenburg County Wheels?
Okay.
I myself was like that until I was involved in a car accident that totaled my car and almost totaled me. And, you know, you really can't call your friends too often. They won't answer the phone when they see your number, for one thing. And I needed transportation. I couldn't drive. Needed to get places. And I thought, oh, this Lunenburg County Wheels. I remember hearing about it, so I called. Fantastic service. They were so solicitous because I had trouble just getting in the van. Chatty, friendly, polite drivers. I used the bus, it's not really bus, the van service several times, and was just delighted every time with the service that I received. When I called, a real person answered the phone. That in itself was really quite exciting, to talk to a real person on the very first ring. So yes, the Bridgewater right now is the main fare bringer-inner. That's not a very good English word, but anyway, you understand that.
So those would be fares from people residing in town,
Yes.
looking to be
Or
transported
within
around
the
town or outside?
Very near perimeter, yes.
Okay. And then-
It is increasing, as I say, everything like this takes a while to become normal. And Nova Scotians are not bus takers. We're not like Europeans who, you know, have subways and buses, and that's normal. We want our own car, and we want to drive that car and keep that car. So taking the bus is a change of lifestyle for a lot of
Right.
people. Like the ridership in the New Germany area has increased quite a bit over the last, 7 months.
Okay.
And as it becomes normal and people talk to their neighbors and say, oh, yeah, the van, the wheels were great,
Right.
then that's how we get our message out there that this is the way to go.
Okay.
But they are, and they have, Bridgewater residents, as I say, for them, it's much more normal
Okay.
to do that.
And then under corporate sponsorships, there's no value. Do you have a specific number you're trying to target there, or?
Oh,
is
I
it-
do in my head, but I wouldn't want to tell you what it is.
Okay.
This is work in progress with the
Okay.
senior wheels, because the Kiwanis supported that.
Yeah.
They didn't have the need so much to go after corporate sponsors.
Okay.
That's going to be my job over the next year or so,
Okay.
is to go after corporations. And I hate to use the word go after them. I want to invite them to become part of the community. And I know businesses are suffering. They're like individuals who are facing rising costs, and I know that's very difficult. And my plan is to invite as many people as possible to become part of this community. And like I say, if it's only $10, that's fine. But it's, again, we're becoming a norm. We just had a bequest from a lady who passed away. In her will, $1,000 was to come to Lunenburg County Wheels.
Okay, good.
And we really appreciate that type of thing. So
Okay.
we're working on it. We're a work in progress.
So just one more.
Yeah.
Sorry and so if you don't balance the budget, what happens? You drop vans? How does that, what's the plan, I guess?
We
If that
don't
were to
even want
happen.
to talk about that.
No, I know. No one wants to talk about it,
But we
but-
have to.
Yeah.
If we don't meet our goals, if we aren't able to balance the books, then we have to look seriously at whether we need to make the fleet smaller.
Okay.
We would love to have more volunteer drivers, so if any of you have extra time, we train you, because that certainly reduces our costs.
Okay.
And we will, accept anyone who's of driving ability that wasn't the person that ran into me, then you're on board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, much appreciated, and of course, I did include an ask package. The main thing we're looking for from Bridgewater Town is for the driver and the fuel. The maintenance and those things, we think we can cover through our grants and donations. So, that's
think-
what we would like.
I think Councillor Thorburn, you have a question?
Not so much a question as a comment. I know the Royal Canadian Legion or the Republic Trust Fund has been supporting Lunenburg County Wheels or Senior Wheels for years and years and years. And that money comes from our Republic Trust Fund that
Yes.
we have every year, and we've always given 1,000 or 2.
Yes, you do.
Depend on our income, and it's a really worthwhile project. So I encourage everybody that's not, if you want to help, because every little bit helps. I know with our Property Trust Fund, it helps, and it helps us support programs like this for our veterans, our youth, and our community. So it's very important, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Any help?
Do you happen to know how many riders in the town of Bridgewater use Lunenburg County Wheels? I know that
Within the
revenue is
town,
9,000, but it's
um,
just curious to know the
You're
number.
looking at about 4,000 up to the end of January, from the 1st of April to the end of January. Of that, I'm just getting the figure in my mind, it's about 78%, I believe, within the town or within the near perimeter of the town.
Okay, like that 7 kilometers or whatever
Yeah, yeah,
metric you use.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's good.
But as I say, it's increasing, and, we can't wait to get into Mahone Bay and Lunenburg and Riverport areas as well, because the people who use the service, I know in New Germany area, have been so delighted that they're mobile. They can get to the community cafe, they can get to, the Fresh Mart and the Shoppers Drug Mart. I still remember a couple of years ago seeing an elderly lady trudging up the hills with her bags of groceries, and the manager at Fresh Mart came out, jumped in her car, and went and got her and said, "Get in the car. Like, you can't be walking all the way home with those bags of groceries. Yeah.
Any other questions from council? So I think next steps is staff will probably be reaching out.
Okay.
We have a grants to organizations committee that has an intake coming up, I believe, in a few weeks at the
Okay.
beginning of March. And so they'll connect you with, staff will connect you with the form to fill out and then the
Great.
submission, how to submit it. And then that goes before the grants
Oh,
committee.
thank you very much.
Okay.
All help is appreciated.
Okay.
As I say, I'm very new at this.
Yeah, no, you did great, thank you. I
Oh,
know it
thank
can
you.
be, it can be unnerving with all these cameras everywhere, but no, you did a great job, thank you. Okay, we are down to planning items, and we have 2 public hearings. And so just for a reminder for council, because it's been a little while since we had a public hearing, and just for fun for the public, because this gets quite complicated. Public hearings are really like separate meetings. So what I will be doing is I will be recessing council, calling the public hearing to order. We'll go through the public hearing from start to finish, then I will reconvene council. Council will make a decision. And then because we have 2 of them, we will do that all over again. So if you are confused, don't worry, I'm always confused about this. So with that in mind, I will recess the regular council meeting, and then we'll move on to our first public hearing, which is municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw amendments for the C7 neighborhood commercial and C8 special commercial zones. I will note that all the statutory requirements have been met. And so this public hearing is now open. And just a note that council's decision is governed by the municipal planning strategy. And I will turn it over to the planner, so that'll be Nick, and he will go through his presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. So this process includes proposed amendments to the neighborhood commercial C7 zone and the special commercial C8 zone. It is staff-led, which means there is no application from a property owner or any specific developments currently proposed for any of the properties in question. This evening's second consideration of the proposed amendments represents part 1 of a larger process. Part 2 will occur later this winter. Sorry. Should I?
Maybe just use the keyboard.
I tried. Yeah, it's on. Sorry, Pat.
It's like totally frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, don't have to move in there.
Thanks. Okay. Excuse me. So, in this presentation, I'll be discussing redesignations and rezonings. So for the benefit of the public, before getting into this more, I wanted to outline what those terms mean and how this works. The town has a municipal planning strategy, or MPS, and a land use bylaw, LUB. The MPS is a policy document that outlines how council envisions the town to develop in the future. It has a future land use map, which separates different areas of town into different designations, showing generally what type of development is envisioned where. So, if there's an application to change a designation on a property, this is called a redesignation. The land use bylaw, or LUB, is more detailed. It conditions development to ensure that the MPS policies are followed by including regulation, such as what uses are permitted where, how much parking is required, what the minimum or maximum setbacks may be, and much more. It has a zoning map, which separates all properties into different zones which have different rules. If there's an application to change a zone on a property, this is called a rezoning. And a rezoning has to fit the designation of the property as outlined in the future land use map. If it doesn't, not only would a rezoning be required, but a redesignation would be required as well. So as mentioned, this process is focused on the neighborhood commercial C7 zone and the special commercial C8 zone. The C7 zone aims to provide opportunities for limited commercial uses in residential zones, or residential areas, that are convenient for people living within a short walking or cycling distance. The C8 zone aims to permit existing commercial uses in residential areas with restrictions in place to limit their growth. This is because some of the uses are not necessarily compatible with those residential areas, or the area doesn't make sense for commercial for other reasons. Both of these zones are part of the limited commercial designation of the future land use map. For this process, staff have examined alternatives to the restrictive development permissions of the C8 zone. To do so, we're looking at redesignating and rezoning these properties for a change to either a residential zone, as is intended by policy, or the neighborhood commercial zone. Perhaps in the end, removing the C8 zone altogether. This process also includes a review of the neighborhood commercial C7 zone, looking at adding more uses and updating the regulations to provide more opportunities for businesses and residents in a manner conducive to the nature of those properties in question. There are 18 properties in town that are zoned special commercial C8. At this time, staff are proposing to rezone 4 of those properties to the C7 zone and proposing to rezone the rest to residential. Staff have split this application into 2 parts, as mentioned. This evening is only for the first part. The first part focuses on those 4 properties that are proposed to be rezoned to C7, the text amendments to the C7 zone to provide more opportunity for redevelopment, and also 1 property that is proposed to be residential. As mentioned, the next round will be done in the near future and will focus on the remaining C8 properties and residential zone alternatives. This map shows all the C8 and C7 properties. The red is C7 and the blue is C8. We will only be discussing some of those C8 properties this evening. A public participation meeting was held on October 18th, 2023. 11 members of the public attended. There was some good discussion. The property owners at 324 Aberdeen Road, which is the Argyle Inn, spoke in favor of the proposed changes. Those same property owners had a question concerning timeline. There was discussion about what may be planned at 324 Aberdeen Road and also at 969 King Street. And questions regarding process and origin. So the neighborhood commercial C7 zone is intended to provide commercial uses to serve residents within a short walking or cycling distance. It caters to the immediate residential area around the properties. The zone focuses on creating walkable areas with more destinations that are still in keeping with the residential area. It does not permit larger scale commercial uses. As shown on this map, the current properties on C7 are scattered around town. The properties are adjacent to HB Studios on Glen Allen Drive, known as Lot 200. Fresh Cuts on King Street, the Hidden Beauty Hair Salon on King Street, Pendleton's Convenience Store on King Street, vacant properties at the corner of Victoria Road and York Street near Brookside Cemetery, and a portion of a property on St. Philip Street. Currently, the C7 zone permits the following uses: 1 and 2 unit dwellings, home-based businesses within a dwelling unit, residential conversions up to 3 units, and that's for main buildings that were constructed prior to August 27th, 1975. Neighborhood grocery and convenience stores with a cap on with a limit to the size of those uses at around 200 square meters, which is just over 2,000 square feet. Offices, personal service shops, also with a cap in size at around 2,000 square feet. 3 and 4 unit dwellings with at least 70% ground floor commercial, and that's by the site plan approval process. And restaurants within neighborhood grocery and convenience stores. Staff are proposing amendments to the neighborhood commercial C7 zone. Including where properties couldn't be or shouldn't be on dead-end streets. This applies to properties that perhaps wish to become C7. This is because staff would rather see these properties in locations that are accessible by more people or by walking and cycling. So the following commercial uses are being proposed with a cap to the floor area at 200 square meters. Neighborhood grocery and convenience, as they are now in the zone. Personal service shops, as they are now. Retail sales and cafes, defined, which cafes are defined as a building or part of a building, primarily serving coffee or tea, and may also serve light meals, sandwiches, and or desserts. Of note, takeout at the cafes would be permitted. However, outdoor facilities associated with those cafes would not be permitted. Additional commercial uses proposed without a size limitation include craft workshops, dog grooming, dressmaking and tailoring, galleries, and studios. There's no size limitation included for that second set because those commercial uses have been deemed less customer intensive. Minimum setback requirements would be reduced from current for the front and flankage yards down to nil. The intent is to reduce the need for a front yard for commercial properties so the building can be more interactive by being closer to the front boundary. Parking requirements are proposed to be waived for the commercial uses. The number of on-site parking spaces is typically dependent on the type of use and then based on floor area. When looking at the current C7 properties, this could require anywhere between 4 and 18 parking spaces on those current properties based on those current uses. This restricts the amount of land that could be used for the building and the use, especially for the smaller lots. There's often on-street parking available in areas where neighborhood commercial is intended, those being those residential areas on local streets. And encouraging parking lots would be counterintuitive to the intention of the zone, which focuses on encouraging people to get there by more active modes of transportation. The application process would be streamlined within the C7 zone by removing the requirement for development agreements for most permitted uses. A development agreement is a legal document approved by council which outlines very specific uses and requirements for a property, but the process is more lengthy and onerous for the applicant and should be reserved for uses that could be more impactful or would be more impactful to the area. The idea is that if there are enough criteria and requirements in place to maintain a more residential-friendly commercial use, which site plan approval does provide, then we won't need the extra scrutiny through the DA process. So the special commercial C8 zone. It was created to allow existing commercial uses to remain in residential areas with restrictions in place to limit their growth. It is very specific. The land use bylaw includes a detailed commercial use that's permitted for each property. The intention behind the restrictive nature is because those uses are potentially not suitable for residential areas. And policy states that these properties should be rezoned per the future land use map when possible or when the current authorized use is discontinued. Some of these properties have proved challenging and have created issues for property owners. So a few years ago, some additional commercial uses were added to the land use bylaw, permitted by the development agreement process. These were added to make it easier for people to repurpose the buildings and properties while still supporting the policy that intends to see these properties become residential over time. Current permissions in the C8 zone include 1 and 2 unit dwellings. There's that site-specific commercial use, that very specific use that is effectively grandfathered by this zone with some expansion opportunity, but not much. Home-based businesses, residential conversions up to 3 units in the main structure or on the property as long as the main structure was built prior to August 27th, 1975. Multi-unit residential up to 4 units per acre, that's by development agreement. Inns by development agreement. Craft workshops, dog grooming, dressmaking and tailoring, galleries, household repair services, offices, personal service shops, retail sales, and studios, all also by the development agreement process. So these are 5 of the 18 that are included in the first part of the process. This table shows excuse me, their current or last authorized use, the proposed zone for the property, the current designation, so what's outlined on the future land use map, and the proposed designation. The green shows residential designations and the blue is commercial. As you can see, 4 of the 5 are proposed for rezoning to the neighborhood commercial C7 zone. The other, being 324 Aberdeen Road, the Argyle Inn, is proposed for rezoning to the comprehensive residential R3 zone. The property at 324 Aberdeen Road is unique as compared to the others and presents good opportunity for residential redevelopment. All but one of these properties would require a redesignation as well as a rezoning. 209 High Street, which is the South Shore Nursery Commercial Plaza, does not because it is already designated limited commercial. For the other 4, the proposed zone doesn't fall under the current designation, so the designation would need to change. There are various reasons for the proposed zones chosen for each property. Staff have considered the current uses, the location in town, proximity to residential properties, access by sidewalk, and the type of building that currently exists. For some more context, I'll go over the properties from that chart. So 324 Aberdeen Road, as mentioned, is the Argyle Inn. The proposed new zone is comprehensive residential R3. 287 King Street is where Cobbler Corner once operated. And there is now a DA in place, development agreement in place, permitting retail and a personal service shop. The proposed new zone is neighborhood commercial, as it is for the rest of these that follow. 101 Victoria Road is Dumont Monuments, located across from Brookside Cemetery at the corner of Victoria Road and Queen Street. 261 York Street is where Langelo's Plumbing and Heating used to operate. That's across from Brookside Cemetery along York Street. And finally, 209 High Street, that commercial building, contains businesses like a laundromat and some retail sales. And this property has an existing development agreement as well, so there are additional uses that can continue even with and on top of a rezoning. As far as impact, if these properties are approved for their rezonings by council this evening, there would be some changes to note. The existing uses and buildings on the properties could remain. If not among the permitted developments in the new zone, these uses would become legal non-conforming. Basically, those would be permitted to continue subject to provisions outlined in the Municipal Government Act. Any proposed change of use would need to align with the permitted developments of the C7 zone as amended, or in the instance of 324 Aberdeen Road, the R3 zone. Importantly, a rezoning can only be considered if the site meets all of the lot size and zone standards for the zone sought. This was considered and in some ways helped to influence the new zone standards, those reduced setback requirements, for example, proposed for the neighborhood commercial C7 zone. To summarize, staff are recommending amendments to the C7 zone to provide modest enhancements and more flexibility for neighborhood-oriented commercial uses, and rezonings and or redesignations for 5 of the current properties located in the special commercial C8 zone. So it is therefore recommended that council give second and final consideration to the proposed amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw as contained in Appendix A of the report. I'll take any questions.
Questions from members of council? I know we've been through this a few times to get here. Councilor Caldwell.
So the proposed amendments would allow clinics, and we'd also have reduced parking requirements. So I've had concerns about Lunenburg has a medical clinic next to a residential area. There's issues with parking in and around that neighborhood that the residents have problems with. So what safeguards would we have to prevent a similar situation?
So We don't. I mean, as far as the proposed amendments are concerned, with no parking requirements, if the parking requirement is waived for the commercial use, then we would rely on the property owner on that use to ensure that there is enough parking, ideally on site, but it doesn't have to be on site because these lots, these properties are located in residential areas, and those local streets do have parking capacity. So it really does come back to the property owner, the business owner, to ensure that they have the parking that they feel they need. So to answer your question, there really isn't a safeguard when you have a bylaw that has a waiver of parking requirements for these commercial uses.
Other questions? Look like there's a follow-up coming.
I don't know if there's a follow-up. I just, I continue to have problems with that, and I'm not sure I can support, I support the rest of this, but I continue to have problems with that in particular. I just worry that we're gonna get into a situation like that. I mean, that's why we have zoning, to prevent those problems, so I have issue with that in particular.
To Councillor Caldwell's point, because I know exactly what you mean, been to that clinic a few times and struggled. Would you say that because you did mention, Nick, that those streets in in Bridgewater around these properties are meant to handle some of the parking? Would they be saying the same thing in Lunenburg, or perhaps those streets are a little bit already more not suited to that? And maybe that's not a fair question to ask you about another community, but.
And yeah, I can't, I'm not sure about the situation in Lunenburg. And when I say that those surrounding streets would have capacity, that's more of a general statement because, you know, York Street, for example, there are some of the streets that they may have a residential character and there's residential zoning, and then you have your neighborhood commercial property, but that street actually may be a collector street. And may not have as much opportunity for on-street parking. So it is still a pretty general statement. So and it's a very fair concern. I think that generally speaking, and this is my opinion, we have minimum parking standards for pretty much any use in really all zones. The C1 zone, the historic downtown commercial zone, has that waive for commercial, and that's more so about the built form on King Street. You know, the parking lots aren't necessarily there, or there isn't that space on the lands. My opinion is that I'd rather have maximum parking requirements so we can actually reduce the amount of parking lots that we have in town. And really the reason, the rationale for waiving the parking requirements in this case is that, you know, the whole intention, the real intention with this zoning is to provide that more neighborhood context, that neighborhood service. So then you could question whether clinics should be in that grouping of permitted land uses, because there could be a much farther reach when it comes to a clinic as opposed to one of the other uses. I mean, you could say the same about personal service shops as well, but the idea there is that these commercial uses are serving that neighborhood, so hopefully people, and we want to encourage people to walk to these uses. I'm not sure that helps, but.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yeah, Nick, I'm not familiar with Lunenburg, but you have put restrictions on the capacity or lot sizes and most of these lots are small lots, they're not big lots, so they wouldn't have a humongous structure there anyway. And we had a clinic up on York Street, and I lived right across from that. Doctor's office was there for quite a while. I don't know what's in there now. I lived at 71 York, right in back of the old hotel.
Okay. It's still doctors,
Yeah,
still
but
medical
I didn't
practitioners.
see that any harm to that particular area, and that's a street with a school on it. And it seemed to get along. I think a lot of it would depend on how big a structure was going to be put onto it, and lot size should control that. Just my opinion on it.
Thank you. Councillor Conklin.
Excuse me. So, not to kind of belabor the example on the parking situation in Lunenburg. I think it's quite similar to Glen Ellen Drive, where that gets quite congested with parking along the street there, but I think that's more of a function of people not wanting to pay for parking at the hospital in Bridgewater and in Lunenburg. You know, they'd rather park down the street instead of paying their $3 or $4 and get in the lot there. So I think that there'd be ample parking.
Other questions? Okay, so as we are the applicant, so there's no other presentation from the applicant. There is a time for comments from members of the public, so I don't know if there are members of the public here that want to speak to this issue. If there is, if you can come to the podium and just let us know your name, please, and where you reside, and then the floor is yours.
Okay, my name is Bill Campbell. I reside in New Brunswick. I'm a planning consultant, and I'm here representing the owners of the Argyle Inn.
Okay. That makes more sense now.
That makes more sense now. I didn't know I'd have to say where I live. Used to live I worked in Nova Scotia all my life. Yes, I'm here representing the owners of the Argyle Inn, and they're very much in favor of the change from the C8 zone to the new zone and designation, the comprehensive residential and the R3. The motel has been there since around 1960. And the neighborhood has grown up around it, and it is primarily residential now. And the change to a residential designation with more flexibility for future development is consistent with the current owner's wishes. So recommend you approve it.
Wonderful. Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak on this particular item? Okay, so hearing none, I will now close the public hearing and reconvene the regular council meeting and ask council what is its wish. Councilor Thorburn.
Make a motion, Your Worship?
Yes, please.
I would move that town council for the town of Bridgewater approve the amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw as contained in Appendix A of document 24-008A with respect to neighborhood commercial C7 and special commercial C8 zones, and hereby give second and final reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Conklin. Further discussion?
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we get to do that all over again with the second public hearing. So I will now again recess the regular council meeting, and we will be moving to the public hearing for 654 Glen Allen Drive and the development agreement application. And so I will now declare this public hearing open and confirm again that all the statutory requirements have been met. And so we will go through the same process. The difference with this one is that after a decision is made, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, there is a 14-day appeal period for this one. Okay, so that's either for the public if they disagree with the decision or for the applicant if they agree with the decision. I know the last one did not have that same mechanism because it's a different process. So with that in mind, I will turn it back over to Nick.
Thank you. Another fairly lengthy one. So an application was submitted to develop a master plan community at 654 Glen Allen Drive. The intent is to develop 450 units made up of townhouses and multi-unit residential buildings. Subject property is outlined in red on the slide, and it's 15 acres in size. Subject property is vacant and was previously used as a Christmas tree farm. Glen Allen Drive is to the west of the site and is a collector street. The property is bounded on the east by the town's wastewater treatment facility and another town-owned undeveloped parcel, and to the north by the Centennial Trail, the Bridgewater Baptist Church, and the 4-story, 96-unit Drumlin Hills apartment building. To the south, the site backs onto single-unit dwellings fronting LaHave Street, and the LaHave Athletic Fields occupy the lands on the opposite side of Glen Allen Drive. So the application is to construct 450 residential units. The development proposal includes 7 multi-unit buildings for a total of 414 units. Those multi-unit buildings would range between 25 and 94 units per building, with heights between 3 and 6 stories. I apologize, the slide says 4 and 6. There is a three-story building in the mix. The development proposal also includes 8 townhouse buildings with a total of 36 units. And then the other aspects of the development proposal will be discussed in more detail later in this presentation. The subject property is zoned comprehensive residential R3 on the zoning map of the land use bylaw. The surrounding zoning is single and 2-unit residential, comprehensive residential, neighborhood commercial, institutional, industrial and light industrial, and recreation. And this is the proposed site plan for the subject property or subject development. It shows the proposed location of those 7 multi-unit buildings and the 8 townhouse buildings. The applicant is proposing 3 new local style public streets. One, shown as Street A, bisecting the middle of the property, would connect to Glen Allen Drive opposite the driveway to the LaHave Athletic Fields and extend to the rear of the subject property to the backlands. The second and third proposed new public streets would form a loop back out to Glen Allen Drive. The land use bylaw permits 25 units per acre on this property through the development agreement process, which results in 375 units. However, an additional 75 units are enabled should 50% of those units be deemed affordable housing. This has resulted in a proposed 38 units of affordable housing. The number of required residential dwelling units to be affordable, 38, is based on the former municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw provision requiring affordable housing in 50% of any bonus residential density. In 2022, Council approved amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw based on a staff-led proposed change from requiring affordable housing in 50% of the bonus dwelling units to requiring affordable housing in 100% of that bonus. However, since this application had been deemed complete prior to the amendment's second and final consideration on October 11th, 2022, the former requirement of 50% has been honored and therefore stands. The draft development agreement includes a definition of affordable housing. That is housing which costs less than 30% of before tax household income, or defined by CMHC or Province of Nova Scotia as affordable for purposes of a housing or financing agreement for a property party to a development agreement. This definition is a variance to the current land use bylaw definition that reads much more simply, housing which costs less than 30% of before tax household income. Because the proposed development agreement in question includes a definition of affordable housing which varies from that of the land use bylaw, Council must align its definition of affordable housing within the land use bylaw. To accomplish this, staff have initiated a separate process to update the current land use bylaw definition to include the development agreement version and alternate assessment of affordability. The subject amendment is being considered concurrently with this development agreement in front of Council for second consideration this evening. However, that definition amendment is a meeting behind. Therefore, as the amendment to update the definition of affordable housing is necessary to the approval of this development agreement, such would represent a condition of approval for the development agreement and is reflected in the final recommendation this evening. So now, with that said, this is the proposed phasing for the development. Phase 1 is shown in orange or red and includes multi-unit building A, 94 units, multi-unit building E, 84 units, or 86 units, sorry, both fronting Glen Allen Drive, as well as 2 5-unit townhouse blocks. Multi-unit building A represents the tallest structure in Phase 1 at 6 stories in height. Phase 2 is shown in purple or blue, and includes multi-unit buildings B and C, 43 units each, multi-unit building D, which is 70 units, and multi-unit building F, which is 53 units. Multi-unit building D represents the tallest structure in Phase 2 at 6 stories in height. And Phase 3, shown in yellow, and includes multi-unit building G, which is 25 units, as well as 6 townhouse buildings, 26 units in total. Each phase is planned to be constructed within a 5-year period, with a total completion timeline of 15 years. The developer would have to construct the phases in order. The street and service infrastructure in each phase would have to be constructed and accepted by the town prior to approval of any subdivision plan or issuance of any permits within that same phase. Public participation meeting was held virtually on January 25th, 2022. 6 members of the public attended, as well as 3 on behalf of the applicant. Particular issues raised included whether any areas were greater than 30% in slope, and if they might need any engineered walls, whether an environmental impact assessment or equivalent had been completed, and whether there would be any concerns related to traffic impact. Staff have completed a policy analysis, which can be found in the report. The comprehensive residential or R3 zone in which this development is located is focused on ensuring the town that most of the town's undeveloped land outside the downtown core will support future residential development. And as mentioned earlier, it permits multi-unit and collective style residential development up to 25 units per acre and up to 30 units per acre through the bonus density and mandated affordable housing. Those permissions for multi-unit residential are enabled through the development agreement process. The general and residential development policies that staff analyzed include to minimize conflict between land uses. We want to consider compatibility with adjacent properties. We want to support a full range of housing options and styles. We want to require amenity space and promote residential densification, encourage context-sensitive residential infill, encourage compact urban form and adaptive reuse. There are policies concerning open space and the environment, including to integrate the appropriate landscaping, incorporate requirements for amenity space, again, retain existing trees, protect water courses, and require stormwater management. Policy regarding transportation includes the adequacy of the street network and active transportation infrastructure. It reviews parking, sidewalks and walkways, those locations, and the connectivity. We looked at the construction of the new streets to town standards and the prohibition of new cul-de-sacs and dead-ended streets, while looking at limiting future residential block sizes. More specifically for transportation, the traffic impact study was required and reviewed the existing transportation network, the number of new trips that would be generated by the development and their estimated distribution into the network, and how those trips would affect the level of service of the transportation network, including nearby intersections. No significant concerns have been raised in association with traffic impact and the adequacy of the street network. Glen Allen Drive is classified as a collector street and is intended for higher traffic volumes and larger vehicles. As always, the town will need to monitor for future necessary improvements to the transportation network in order to ensure an acceptable level of service is maintained. Any upgrades that may be required at the intersections of Glen Allen Drive and the future public streets shown with this development would be determined at detailed design. But for now, the traffic impact study concluded that the new intersections to the development would operate at high levels of service with little to no delay or queuing and capacity utilization. Both intersections would operate well with a single entry and exit lane, so a 2-lane cross-section with stop controls. Infrastructure is also analyzed when creating a development agreement. And within the draft development agreement, there are requirements that stormwater must be managed on the property so that surface water generated from this development cannot be more intensive than what previously existed. The servicing plan proposes wastewater servicing for 236 units directly to the wastewater treatment facility and 216 units via the downstream collection system on Glen Allen Drive. Those units using the Glen Allen Drive collection system for sanitary sewer would require a downstream wastewater capacity assessment prior to permit issuance. In summary, the draft development agreement outlines the permitted use as a maximum of 450 residential units, and of those, a maximum of 414 would be in multi-unit dwellings. Staff included the maximum number of multi-unit dwellings as this proposal includes limited variety in unit types. So this gives the developer the flexibility to change their dwelling types in the future, but keep the number in multi-unit buildings capped based on the proposal at hand. There's the 38 units required for affordable housing and the new definition. The development agreement also states a minimum of 20% of the units in phase 1 shall be of 2 or more bedrooms. The unit breakdown hasn't yet been determined, so staff aim to ensure there's a certain amount of units that would be suitable for larger family units in the first phase of development. Additionally, commercial uses on the property would be permitted but limited to an office use to a maximum 400 square meters, and neighborhood convenience stores on a corner of a collector street, which would be Glen Allen Drive, up to 93 square meters in commercial floor area. The draft development agreement includes building characteristics for multi-unit dwellings and townhouses. These are in lieu of elevation drawings within the development agreement. So urban design requirements were introduced with the aim to leave flexibility but also encourage engaging development. Those include for multi-units, the maximum height would be 6 stories. The ground floor story would be at street line grade. That is included because there are some slopes on the property and staff wanted to avoid exposed foundations. All multi-unit buildings would include primary entrances on all facades oriented toward and abutting a public street. To ensure variation along the street, there would need to be varying vertical architecture on the multi-unit buildings, which means using different facade materials or projections to break up the more expansive spaces. There is a provision in the draft DA requiring that windows and doors occupy not less than 25% of any facade. And the multi-units abutting a public street would need a minimum 6-foot step back at the base of the 4th story on the facades oriented towards the street. And that's to reduce the scale if you are a pedestrian looking up at the building. That portion, 4 stories and up, is actually stepped back from the front main wall. As for building characteristics for townhouses, there would also be a requirement for varying vertical architecture where units are separated by a common vertical wall. And garages would not be permitted to project beyond the front main wall of dwellings. These requirements aim to help create a more walkable and welcoming environment along the street. The development agreement also outlines property characteristics. There is a maximum front yard setback at 8 meters or 26 feet for multi-unit dwellings. This is to bring buildings closer to the street to create a more engaging street. There would need to be a paved pedestrian access adjacent to driveways where it can be anticipated that people will walk to get to the building entrance. All multi-units would also need paved pedestrian access between the buildings and the parking lots and the main entrances and the adjacent streets to ensure a safe space for people to walk. As mentioned, there would be 3 new public streets Based on the town's design and construction standards, local streets require a sidewalk on one side, which is being proposed for 2 of the streets. And then Street A is proposed to exceed the town standard with sidewalk proposed on both sides. Additionally, the development proposes a new municipal sidewalk to the town standard connecting Public Street A to the Centennial Trail and Public Street A to Public Street B. Finally, landscaping would need to be in accordance with a submitted planting plan. Site preparation, including grubbing, but excluding grubbing for trail development, outside the proposed street rights of way, would not occur until development permits are issued for the associated phase. Regarding parking, draft EA specifies that a minimum of 1 vehicular parking space is required per 1 unit. Site plan shows 1.5 spaces per 1 unit, which exceeds the minimum as specified in the draft development agreement. Bicycle parking would be as per the land use bylaw at 0.5 spaces per 1 unit. The development agreement specifies that between 50 and 90% of the total bicycle parking should be inside a building. Regarding servicing, comprehensive design report would be required prior to any development. Additionally, detailed submissions for building services are required prior to building permit issuance for each building. Adequate fire protection would be a necessity. Downstream wastewater capacity assessment would be required for those units discharging into the Glen Allen Drive collection system prior to any development permits in Phase 1 and Phase 3, those being the phases that contain those buildings that would discharge into the collection system. And disconnection of all unused service infrastructure currently installed and connected to the Glen Allen Drive subgrade infrastructure must be removed prior to any occupancy permit granted for Phase 1. So Glen Allen Drive has existing laterals spaced at 60-foot intervals up and down Glen Allen Drive for this particular vacant parcel. If those are being unused, they have to be removed, and that's a standard that the town has. And concerning stormwater management, specifically that a detailed stormwater management report, including a grading plan, would be required, and additionally there would be plans required for each subsequent phase. This is to ensure the stormwater management plan is always up to date and specific for such a large area, being this development site. Stormwater pond or similar facility is required and is shown on the bottom of the property, and it would have to be complete prior to Phase 2. The substantive matters included in the development agreement include permitted number of units on the 15 acres, provision of affordable housing, and maximum yard setbacks. Also, there is a partial discharge clause to account for the long timeline of the development agreement. So if phases 2 and 3 are not complete within the allotted timelines, council would have that opportunity or option to partially discharge the agreement. So staff recommend that council give second and final consideration to the proposed development agreement and enter into the development agreement regarding the property at 654 Glen Allen Drive, conditional on the approval of the land use bylaw amendment to the definition of affordable housing at the scheduled public hearing on February 26th, 2024.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Questions from members of council? Again, we've talked about this one for a while. We've waited eagerly for this project for a while. It's here, but if there's any questions, Councilor Thorburn?
Just a comment. It's nice to see that those affordable units are in Phase 1 and Phase 2, because we desperately need those, Nick, and I think that's nice to have them there. Thanks to you.
Thank you, Councilor Caldwell.
This question was also about affordable housing. So affordable housing is required by Phase 2. Do we know if there will be affordable housing in Phase 1 and how much?
I do not know that, but the applicant may.
So the applicant, I believe the applicant is going to be speaking after, so, no, I think, so. You can re-ask your question there. Any other questions from council? Okay, so I do know that now is the time if there's a presentation from the applicant, who wishes to come up and address council and the public.
Hi, folks. My name's Eric Birchall. I'm the Vice President of Planning and Development with Dora Construction and Summerlid Properties. I just want to thank Nick particularly, but all the staff that have helped us with the application. Really appreciate the assistance in pulling things together, and we're happy to be here tonight. Won't take up too much of your time, but I did think it'd be good, perhaps context for council to understand a little bit more about who we are as the applicant. So Summerlid Properties is actually the applicant and owner of the property, but Summerlid Properties is part of the Macklin Group of companies, which includes Dora Construction as well as Dora Modular and East Cut Construction. And the reason why I reference that is it would be the anticipation that our offsite manufacturing facilities in Trenton, both East Cut and potentially Dora Modular Construction, would be part of the construction and supply chain for the projects here. So we're already working throughout the province in a range of panelized assemblies as well as moving into volumetric modular construction. And so we'll be looking at that for both the grade-related units for the townhouses in particular, but also for the multi-res buildings. So generally the project objectives, which I think Nick outlined quite well, is really to create a mix of residential housing types located close to the community infrastructure that already exists, and as much as possible to provide affordable housing in a very walkable and complete community here in the town of Bridgewater. The question with regards to affordable housing components for phase 1 and phase 2, won't make you ask the question again. The DA does read that those units will be provided in phase 1 and phase 2. It would be our hope that they could be provided in phase 1. It would also be our hope that we could exceed the regulatory requirements with regards to the affordable housing pieces. I think for context, it's good for council to understand that we're working with a variety of affordable housing providers across the province on a number of projects. So we're currently constructing the 2 RHI projects federally funded in both Halifax and in CBRM. So those are under construction right now. We've worked with 2 different partner organizations with regards to both the design and now the construction of those projects. So we're, as an entity, we're deeply involved in the affordable housing space, and so it would be our hope that we could exceed the requirements under the bonus zoning. But a lot of it, as you know, is still evolving as we all work collectively to try and expand the provision of affordable housing. Won't get too much into the built form here. Again, lots of detailed design to do, but the materials in the DA and in the staff report, I think, lay out sort of the community here, and we feel that we've got a nice design here. It's going to fit well as an infill project within the community and really dovetail well with the other existing, in particular, active transportation infrastructure that you folks have in the area. Again, we've just talked about the Macklin Group of companies, but we think it is really an advantage to have sort of an integration from project inception on the design side right through manufacturing and actually owning the assets in the long term. So we're able to take a long-term view with regards to the development of the products. And of course, we're invested in ensuring that what goes on the site there is built for purpose and built to last. So I think, a little bit about some of the other projects we have with regards to Summerlid Properties. The Dunkeld is a project that's just in the final stages of completion. It is one that was built out of our East Cut manufacturer. The panelized assemblies were constructed in the facility in Trenton. In this case, moving them to a site in Glasgow wasn't a long trip, but that project is scheduled to be occupied here in the spring, in the next couple of months, so it's nearing completion. It's a 78-unit residential project with half of the ground floor is commercial construction, so it's commercial occupancy, so it's a mixed-use project. And like I say, Dora Construction's been around since 2003. We work across Atlantic Canada, but primarily in the province of Nova Scotia. And we've worked collaboratively with many other nonprofit organizations over time. So you can see there on the slide, lower left-hand corner is the Brunswick Street RHI project, the New Dawn one in Sydney in the bottom left, AHAN's True North project in the right-hand corner on the right, is under construction right now. The first phase was completed, 3 other phases are being constructed. It's interesting to note that those 2 projects were both built to a passive house standard, so a very high performance envelope. And again, for the not-for-profits that we're building for there, capital can be obtained, but they really struggle on operating. So the investment in the extra high-performing envelopes there will really lower the operating costs for the entities that will be operating them, but also provide a great standard of, or a quality of residential experience for the occupants. So I think there's a photo of an East Cut Assembly Hall with the roof being put together. And again, our facilities there in Trenton are, I think, a great news story for the overall environment here in the construction industry in the province, and taking what was a former manufacturing facility and really repurposing it for the new economy. So that's where some of the components for the project here will be coming from. All right. Any further questions?
Any questions from council? No, I guess that's great. Appreciate that. Thank you. Doesn't happen all the time. It's always kind of nice to have a presentation from the applicant as well. Also, I appreciate seeing the other projects as well. I think the public does too, to see kind of that what else is possible, because that's what you're doing. So that's good. Are there any members of the public that wish to make comment on this proposal? If you'd like to just come up and give us your name and where you reside, please.
My chance, my 15 minutes of fame. Hi, Trevor Cork. My own property on LaHave Street, which would be, I'm not sure if it's south, but you know, adjoining to the property. My only concern would be water runoff, because you know we're downhill from the above property and water runs downhill. I know there is a storm pond that was in the proposal in order to collect water. It just wasn't clear to me how water inflows, but the egress from that pond, I'm not sure where it would go.
Yeah, so that's a very valid question, and perhaps I'll direct that to staff. I know it's at a very basic, our policy is that the water off the property now can't be any more than it after the project's done, any more than it is now. But I don't know, Nick, if you're able to. Yep, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's a good question. It comes up quite often because you see a pond and then it's like, well, that's great, but there's water entering that pond and it must be discharging somewhere. So yeah, the way that our standards read is it's really about peak events, and so how it goes is that, you know, post-development peak flows cannot exceed those of the pre-development state. So all of the storm and surface water being generated from this development, all the new hard surfaces, the streets, the buildings, you know, that is then collected by a pond and then slowly discharged. So it's about managing the peak flows, and so there's runoff from the site now. There would be natural runoff coming from that site. And so what we're doing is through this design, and I'm not an engineer, but so engineers in the crowd can step up and correct me, but we're basically taking that water, retaining it or detaining it in a facility, and then once it gets to a certain point, it starts to release gradually and naturally back into the system. There's some infiltration involved with those facilities as well, so not all that, it's not like a hard-lined pond, or it could be, but it's probably not going to be, and so the idea there is that stormwater is then infiltrating into the ground as well through this facility. Now, this development, we have a plan at a fairly high level. As mentioned in my presentation, there is a requirement for more detailed design as it relates to stormwater management, again, to ensure that peak post-development flows do not exceed those of the pre-development state. I know that the engineer for the applicant is here, and he's on the edge of his seat. Roger, do you want to?
Yeah, if you want to come down, yeah.
Council, thanks. Appreciate it. Roger Boychuk, I work with Fathom Studio. If you saw the tagline on a lot of the drawings that came in, so we did a lot of the preliminary work, including the servicing studies and the stormwater management study at a preliminary stage. Obviously, there's much more work that needs to go into the specific detailed design. But our really original plan really looked at doing sort of a micromanagement. Certainly, there's some water that's going to end up down towards the bottom of the development. And if you know the site at all, it's basically like that. And,
Yeah.
and there's a little split. Some goes off towards Glen Allen, and there's a fairly good chunk that comes behind those houses. And it's a very up and down undulating ground with lots of sort of built-in storage there already. And it eventually kind of makes its way down through some houses to a discharge point. So as Nick had mentioned, whatever's going through that current discharge point now must be less. And I won't speak too far for Eric here and from the development side, but quite often when we get into this, the last thing we want is stormwater issues. So we tend to design a little bit overboard, probably to make sure that less is going to make sure there are no issues even. And as you know, we've got some interesting climate change challenges coming our way. So certainly as we get into detailed design, that's going to be accounted for in terms of the rainfall events and the predicted future increased rainfall. So what I meant before, sort of the micromanagement, as opposed to sort of one big pond right at the bottom that collects everything, we're really looking at a series of kind of micromanagement. For example, in parking lots during storms, major storms, you can collect a little bit within a parking lot and let it store within green areas and treed areas. And you can't do a lot, but you can do a little bit here and you can do a little bit here, and in front of buildings you could have planted areas. So really we're looking to micromanage a lot of the stormwater throughout the site as it travels down, with some of that ending up down in the stormwater pond. So instead of a stormwater pond this big, we're hoping to have a stormwater pond about this big, and like I say, micromanagement throughout the site to help manage that. So. Any more questions? I hope you, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Any questions? No, that's very helpful.
Thank you.
I see some smiling at the back and some nods, so hopefully that helps.
My only comment would be, we talked about it can't be any greater than the before. The after's not greater than the before. I don't think anybody knows what the before is in order to have a benchmark. Yeah, well, because it's over a large area now that's distributed versus, trying to be.
So maybe what I'll get you to, if you guys want to connect, you can either come up and explain it in case, if you want to come up and explain that, because that's.
Yeah, I'll do a little bit, and then certainly we can connect after.
Yeah.
So what's required from stormwater management perspectives as you go here is a pre and post development analysis. So we have to look at the site now and say, through some models and the rainfall events and some calibration of that, we have to be able to come back and say, here's what's happening right now. So we model that and we come up with all kinds of crazy numbers that say, here's what's coming off the site in a 2-year storm event, a 5-year storm event, a 100-year storm event. And so we have a baseline of what's there right now. And then we have to do enough management on site designing all those pieces then that says, well, here's what it is now, here's what it is, and usually what we do, here's what it is if we don't do anything, and here's how we're going to manage that difference between that pre and post.
So to the gentleman's point, you do have a way to kind of, through modeling, determine what it is roughly to, like, obviously you're not collecting water today to measure it, but you do have a way to kind of analyze that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
We tend to model it, and then we tend to talk to a lot of people to make sure that the models look reasonable. We'll often go onto site during rain events and make sure what our models are saying reasonably represents what's on the, what we're seeing on the ground. And if we're not sure, then we're a little bit more conservative about our calculations to make sure we're on the safe side of everything. Right. So for sure, all those, as we go through detailed design, the town will be absolutely requiring a detailed set of calculations in the models that we'll hand over, and they'll look at it, and their engineering staff will make sure that we're doing the job that we're supposed to be doing. And so by the end of that, we'll have our stamp on it, making sure that it's okay, and we'd have an approval by the town, presumably saying that, yeah, we did the proper job to deal with any.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And just on another subject.
Yeah.
What about the osprey? What are we going to do with the poor osprey?
Yeah, I knew that question was going to come up. Right. So it appears on social media quite a bit. Yeah.
And I may refer to the applicant as well, because it's really outside of the scope of the development agreement, but we have had those discussions, and it did come up, of course, at the public participation meeting as well, and everyone in town really, and certainly in that area, love that osprey nest. So there's protocol in place for moving osprey nests, but I'm not sure that's the intention here, but if it is removed, you know, it just is removed in close proximity, and these processes are highly regulated by other levels of government, and so we've had those discussions. There's the other piece to that is that nests can't be moved or must be moved outside of nesting season, but I'm not sure. I'm not positive. I don't know if Eric, if.
Other than, I mean, we obviously recognize that it needs to be cared for and relocated to, you know, a site which would support the wildlife. Where the best spot for that site is remains to be seen. We'd love to be able to incorporate it into the development somehow in a way that worked for the wildlife. But again, we'll deal with the specifics of that with experts that can advise us all on how best to treat our feathered friends.
Right, so I guess in response to not just the gentleman's question, but the question that we do get quite a bit is that you would be working with the government levels that are responsible for this to make sure whatever is done according to regulations and care for the animal.
And nothing, more importantly, nothing will be done until
Right.
we all can certify that the right thing is being done.
Okay, perfect, that's helpful. Thank you. Are there any more members of the public that wish to comment on this topic? Hearing none, I'll just add my closing remarks before we reconvene or close the public hearing, reconvene council. I'll just say this project, I know both from the applicants and staff, has been a long time in the works. It's a large project. It's an exciting project. There's no denying that we have housing challenges, well, not just in Bridgewater, but Nova Scotia and Canada. So we have housing challenges, and then we have affordable housing challenges. And so this checks both of those boxes. That it is on the transit route is, I know that's incredibly important to everyone around the council table, and I know especially to staff, to have that along there. So I'm excited that we're at this stage on a piece of property that I think everyone I talk to says, you know what, that piece of property would be great for a nice development, residential development with some affordable housing. So, check. So anyway, I just wanted to thank the applicant and your team, but also for the members of the public that come and speak. It's not always easy to come before council. It's also not easy to come before the applicant and ask a question. So I do appreciate you taking the time out on a Monday night to come and ask that question. And then to staff, the presentation was 21 pages. That's just the PowerPoint presentation. So that's what the public gets. And the public, if you go onto the Town of Bridgewater website, you go under council, you can see the council package and all the documentation that we have. But is it fair to say it's not just hundreds of hours of staff time? It's probably going into like 1,000 hours of staff time when you think of all the staff that work on this, right? So it's community development, it's engineering, there's wastewater calculations and stormwater, and all these things have to be traffic, all have to be factored in, and then Nick gives multiple presentations to council, and so it's not just a 21-page PowerPoint deck. It's backed up by a package that is massive. And so I want to publicly extend our thanks to community development and engineering staff who put in a lot of work to get that down to 21 slides, a couple of which have pictures, but that can be expressed and explained in a way that that we can all understand. But the referencing documents are all there. And I would encourage the public, if they have any questions, to reach out to staff. So with that in mind, I will close the public hearing and reconvene the regular council meeting and ask what is the wish of council on this item. Councillor Tanner.
I move that Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater approve the development agreement regarding the property located at 654 Glen Allen Drive in a manner similar to the draft development agreement as shown in Appendix A of document 24-009A, conditional on the approval of the land use bylaw amendment to the definition of affordable housing at the scheduled public hearing on February 26, 2024. Subsequently, the mayor and municipal clerk are hereby authorized to execute the agreement and any other required instruments only within the time frame described in the development agreement. Should the document not be signed within the timeframe described in the development agreement, council shall consider any request to sign the development agreement as a new application and follow the entire process required by the Municipal Government Act.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Fragier. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we will continue on with our agenda. I'm just going to back up a little bit because we did delegations. We had the presentation for Ann Jodry, and then I moved on, but I should have asked if there were any other members of the public. I don't think there are, to talk about any other topics, but I don't think there are. I think they're all together. I think we're good, so we'll just continue to move on. We have correspondence for information. We have a response from the Nova Scotia Housing Minister for Housing and Municipal Affairs. This was in response to a number of municipalities have asked the province to set up a vulnerable persons registry. And I know the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities has also made this request. The province has provided some responses, including that they felt it was best done at the local level. So that is there for people to read. And again, all the notes that we have are available for members of the public. Okay, we are down to reports and recommendations. So policy 96, facade improvements, and I think Kelsey's going to come down and walk through this one with us.
Yes, I am. Good evening, everybody. So staff are proposing amendments to policy 96, which is known as the Bridgewater Facade Improvement Policy, as it relates to the Bridgewater Facade Improvement Program. The proposed amendments reflect Council's decision to suspend the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee on October 10th of 2023. DPAC, the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, played a key role in the administration of the facade improvement program, and they're mentioned in policy 96. Given the suspension, staff proposed that the committee be removed from the policy and that the Heritage Advisory Committee take over responsibility for reviewing the program's design and guide and design manual, while staff are transferred the responsibility of program application reviews and recommendations to council. Staff will also consult with the Heritage Advisory Committee as appropriate, which would include applications related to pre-1920s buildings in the downtown business district to which this program applies. So the HAC, or the Heritage Advisory Committee, has a mandate to advise on matters regarding heritage conservation, and the committee members have expertise in built heritage. This expertise makes them well suited to review the guide and design manual as it relates to public facades, a component of built heritage. They're also well positioned to speak to applications with a heritage component, so that's why staff will be consulting with them on pre-1920s buildings, or applications related to those buildings. Staff are already involved in the reviewing and vetting of applications, though, and they have an understanding of both built heritage and planning matters as they relate to the facade improvement program. We sought legal advice related to whether or not staff could make recommendations to council about the disbursement of funds, and it was confirmed that we are able to, so long as council makes the final decision about the funds for the program. It's also important to note that these proposed amendments do not impact the budget for the program. However, they do require amendments to the design and guide and design manual, to reflect changes to the program administration. So they would also have to reflect the fact that DPAC would be removed and that HAC and staff would take over those responsibilities. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions from members of council? No?
Very straightforward item.
Very straightforward. No, perfect. Thank you for that. I'd like a motion from council. Councilor Thorburn, please.
I will say that HAC discussed this multiple times and give some input into this program, and we look forward to working with town staff to make it work for the town. And I would move that the town council for the town of Bridgewater repeal policy 96, facade improvement, originally approved on June the 10th, 2019, effective immediately, and approve new policy 96, facade improvement, as presented in document 24-018A, which is revised to A, remove the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee, DPAC, from the policy, transfer the new review of the design and guide manual to the Heritage Advisory Committee, and C, transfer the responsibility of the program application reviews and the subsequent recommendation to council to town staff effective immediately.
Perfect. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Frazier, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, motion is carried. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you.
I agree. Okay, we have in our notes the January 22nd discussion session. Again, all these documents are available for the public online. We discussed fireworks, and so I do believe we decided to not make any changes until the 2025 year, respecting that it was the town. Am I reading these notes wrong? I'm reading these notes incorrectly then. Okay, we discussed, oh yeah, okay. We discussed moving the fireworks from Canada Day to the Harvest Moon Festival, as well as keeping them with Christmas on the Have, with the understanding that, of course, there are dozens of firework displays across the region on Canada Day, and so it allows people to move around and enjoy those fireworks on Canada Day, and then we will have the Harvest Moon and the Christmas on the Have fireworks displays as usual. And then we discussed what that might look like the following year for those fall fireworks. That's where I was. Thanks, Pat, for nodding in the back. Also, budget engagement and discussion we discussed, and we've noted a few times that we'll be doing some Talk Bridgewater sessions soon, I would imagine. As soon as we get a draft copy of the budget, we'll be out, and those dates will be communicated. I have decided I am going to do an hour on the bus before we go to the Talk Bridgewater. I'm going to take the bus to the Talk Bridgewater session. So if anyone wants to join me on the bus, I'm doing an hour on Talk Bridgewater on the bus. I think that'd be really cool. Cool. Or we could split up and take multiple. We just ride it all day. I'm looking at Councilor Caldwell because I think you'd just be having a blast.
Spend all day on the bus with you? Is that what you're suggesting? Or just an hour?
I wouldn't do that to you. I would do an hour and then maybe you could go on. I have a feeling that the drivers would kick both of us off at some point in time. Although I met David, the driver, on Saturday, who was just chatting it up with everybody. And as everyone was getting off, they're like, thanks, David. And I thought, this is great. And I realized I saw the name on his shirt, and they're talking to David, the driver. They were not thanking me as they got off the bus. So, okay. And then strategic priorities update, which our CAO is going to go over in a few minutes. And then we also talked about Kinsman Ball Field accessibility. So that's a topic that's come up a few times. And so we'll be engaging the Baseball Association about that. So again, these are all available online, all these notes. And some of these topics are going to come back a few times to the council. So also is the January 2024 building inspection and building permit report. That's in the document package. So for anyone's perusal. And then we are giving notice of motion for policy 81, which is our flag flying policy. So when we give notice, it means that it's going to come up. This is a topic that will be on the next agenda. And so I don't know. I'm going to spare the CAO, who's feeling under the weather, from going through this. So just this topic will be on the council meeting. Oh, Pat, are you going to? All right, perfect.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Very simply, we're asking Council to give notice of its intention to consider some brief amendments to the town's flag flying policy, essentially geared towards creating a second special purpose flagpole at Des Brisay Museum. So that'll be coming forward, as you said, at the next council meeting, pending council's direction to do so tonight.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't think anyone have any questions on that? Good. Yep. So we can talk about it in 2 weeks. Can I have a motion? Councilor Caldwell, thank you.
I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater give notice pursuant to section 48 of the Municipal Government Act that at the February 26, 2024 council meeting, amendments to policy 81, flag flying, will be considered to designate one of the flagpoles located on the property of the Des Brisay Museum as a special purpose flagpole, in addition to the current special purpose flagpole at Shipyards Landing.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Conklin. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We also have the January 2024 monthly report from the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Coordinator. Again, a group that I don't know what we would do if we didn't have this group. I mean, they have a Facebook page and they have an online presence. So if people have questions, they can reach out. People want to find a way to help them, they can absolutely reach out to them, and they'll tell you how you can support them. But there is a great need for their services. Down to 9.6, it's the Q3, the 2023-24 strategic priorities and departmental quarterly reports, and I'll turn it over to our CAO.
Okay, attached to your agenda, Council, is the Q3 report for strategic priorities. So that takes us up to the end of December 2023. And these highlight the priorities that Council had approved for the 23-24 fiscal year. So Council recently went through establishing strategic priorities that would see us into the next fiscal year. So there's a few new topics or matters on our revised priority sheet that you don't see on this one here, because this is just the 23-24. And also attached are the quarterly reports for each department that also highlight the strategic priorities, but also review the other activities and other projects that the departments are working on a daily basis. So just quickly to highlight for Council, in terms of the strategic priorities, Exit 12A, we had in the Q3, we had the appraisal about 90% done, I believe it was, or 75. And since then, it looks like it's been completed. And this will establish kind of an idea for Council as in terms of the appraised value of the property to help us as we look at setting sale prices for that area. And we also discussed in Q3 taking a bit of a step back and looking at the development concept for the area, and we'll be arranging a session with Council shortly within in Q4 to look at how we should move forward and plan for development in that area. In particular, how it impacts block sales and where we want uses to go. Housing, the main activity that occurred in the third quarter is had to do with the sale of Lot 102, and we are actively working on amendments to our land use bylaw that would enable the proposed development of housing that would be geared towards healthcare workers on that lot. So we have that kind of noted at 60% completed during that phase. Development charges, there hasn't been a whole lot of movement on that in the third quarter, and that's primarily because we had to rescope it given that we had no responses to our RFP and break that out a bit. So that we're looking at going back out and having bids based on breaking it into two phases. The marketing levy, so Council remembers there was special legislation that was approved that enabled municipalities to develop their own marketing levy bylaws to levy rates on hotel night stays that would enable Council to spend the funds on tourism related activities, and these would be charged to visitors that stayed in those hotels. We have a draft bylaw, and that bylaw was developed with a regional lens that all municipal units would consider within Lunenburg County developing a bylaw with similar wording. That has yet to come to Council. We will be bringing that forward hopefully in the first quarter of 2024 with an implementation plan. So there's a few logistics that we have to work out, and that's right from when would be a good time to implement, as well as how we collect the fees and what the fees would be used for, and a communication strategy as well that would be wrapped up in that. So you should see some movement in Q1, but Q3 was basically doing a little bit of research into implementation. Wastewater, Council gave direction for us to amend our planning strategy and land use bylaw to ensure that our zoning aligned with our wastewater limitations, and that's 90% complete, and we should be bringing that forward very shortly in Q4 for Council to consider. When we look at the next items, the main activities in that area had to do with the accessibility plan, and that was the built environment standards had come out, and we had done a review of that and provided comment with respects to any concerns or questions. So there are more questions, I think, with respect to that, as they did the draft, so as to help them in preparing the final. And I would note that the public transportation standards, so that has to do with transit, those are going to be issued out for comment fairly shortly. So we do have staff participation on that group as well. And then we had the subdivision bylaw. So council had asked us to look at amending the subdivision bylaw with respects to open space. And that report has been worked on during the last quarter and will be coming to council for consideration in the fourth quarter. And then museum, we wrapped up the workshop with council in Q2 and also got some decisions with respects to how we move forward with the museum in terms of its funding long term and looking at rebranding that. In terms of HR recruitment and retention, in the third quarter, we did some work with the leadership team, and we continue that into the fourth quarter, looking at some team building activities there and some leadership training. And in addition to that, I can, just on the recruitment side, even though it's not a strategic priority, it's still a priority. We have finalized 3 recruitments that have been outstanding for a while, so I'm happy to advise council that we have as you can see in the audience, the Deputy CAO, Mark Flint. So that was concluded during the third quarter. And we've also just wrapped up the Assistant Engineering Services Manager and the Manager of Environmental Services positions as well in the engineering department. So those have just been filled, and those have been a long recruitment process. So we're happy to see that completed as well. And as indicated, the quarterly reports provided a lot more detail in terms of activity, and if there's any questions you have, we have some of the staff here in attendance, and if not, we can get to the answers if we can't answer them.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions from council on that? No? So as CAO said, if you do have questions, you know how to submit those, and we'll get the answers for you. And I'm thrilled. I'm sure staff is extremely ecstatic to know that we're filling some of the vacancies that we've had. It's been a challenge across the province to find folks to fill roles in communities like ours. So this is good news, and looking forward to them starting. So that's great. If there's no questions, is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Conklin, thank you.
Let's find the motion. Excuse me. I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater accept the strategic priorities, departmental quarterly reports, and the capital implementation plan for the third quarter of the 2023-24 fiscal year as presented in document series 24-034 series.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorburn. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we are down to our last item, under new business. We have the Southwest Nova Scotia Bioeconomy Development Opportunity Zone.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
How are we tonight?
No lobster claws.
No
tonight,
lobster
eh?
claws.
No.
No birds.
Don't want to overdo it too much.
It's a bit of a letdown there.
Oh, but I bring great news.
Awesome.
So it's quite okay. So earlier in 2023, as you may recall, regionally, we had undertaken an approach to look at biomass that exists here within Southwest Nova Scotia. It was an initiative that was brought to our region by the Nova Scotia Innovation Hub. That was their name at the time. They've just recently gone through a rebranding program, and so now it is called Green Spring Bioinnovation Hub. Same organization, just gone through an evolution. At the time, they'd approached us to look at the resource that's currently available within Southwest Nova as a byproduct of our existing lumber industry, our forestry industry. It's a byproduct. When Bowater was in place, the byproduct that was being created as a part of the process was being put to use in the Bowater Mersey Paper Company's approaches. Since the closure, we've got a reserve of this feedstock that is sitting, waiting for something to happen with it. The Innovation Center had approached ourselves as the town of Bridgewater, given the fact that we had an expanding business park and were known to be open to opportunities for clean fuel and initiatives that would push ourselves forward. So they approached ourselves, the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, as well as the municipality of Chester and the region of Queens. So as a consortium of 4 municipalities alongside the Innovation Hub, we contracted EcoStrat, which is known internationally for assessing feedstock and the availability to reach into market, and they conducted their review. Within your package, what you do have is a background document which we prepared to be able to provide you with a bit more indication, bringing you up. We're trying to bring everybody up to speed in what is biostock, biofeed, what is the wood fiber related components, and what does a BDO zone really mean. So within your package is a background document. And I guess just for everyone that's joining us, what is a BDO zone? The BDO zone is the Bioeconomy Development Opportunity Zone Initiative that certifies regional readiness for bioeconomy projects by providing a CSA certified rating that assesses the investability of raw material supply or feedstock, manufacturing assets, workforce, and transportation networks within a region. So the document is there, and you'll see the background pieces. It concluded at the end of 2023, and we had some great news. Part of the BDO zone assessments are done throughout North America, and there are only a handful in Canada, and only one in Atlantic Canada, and that is ours now, assessing the Southwest Nova region within 150 kilometers of Caledonia. So that's the feeding zone that we are looking at as a resource. Enclosed in your package as well is the press release that was issued as a part of the announcement. And I'll just read the headline and the opening paragraph to give you a sense of where we sit and how positive it is. Southwest Nova Scotia recognized as a prime location to develop bioeconomy projects is our headline. The opening paragraph, the Green Spring Bioinnovation Hub, Town of Bridgewater, Municipality of Chester, Municipality of the District of Lunenburg, the Region of Queens Municipality, and EcoStrat are pleased to announce the issuance of an A-rated bioeconomy development opportunity zone within Southwest Nova Scotia. The A rating reflects the sustainable availability of 550,000 green metric tons per year of sawmill residuals and byproduct wood fiber from the forest sector, as well as strong feedstock supply chains, modern transportation networks, and multiple commercial parks looking to host new businesses. This does not mean that we are going to bring in and set up a feedstock production facility in Bridgewater. What this does say is that within our region, we have the ability to support such an endeavor. We had looked at 4 sites in particular within this region. One is in Caledonia, adjacent to Freeman's Lumber. The idea of the potential of co-housing a facility adjacent to a feedstock supplier is ideal. So having Freeman's in place in Caledonia with their expansion that they've been undertaking is ideal. The second location is the Port Mersey property, which is just outside of Liverpool in Brooklyn. Third is certainly our expanded business park area that's coming online as a direct result of our expansion to include Exit 12A as a part of that process. And then the third is in Chester in association with Kaiser Meadows, which has, being its location and initiatives that are taking place there, it may also be in an ideal location. What's most important through all of this is the fact that we are looking at other fuel sources that could be integrated into not only our existing manufacturers and industrial operations, but also to future, as everyone reaches towards clean fuel options and net zero. So what this does for us is we didn't know what we had. What was the quality of it? How accessible was it? What did it look like in comparison to other certified areas? Turns out we're not looking too bad. We've got an A rating, and we're just beginning to roll out with the marketing and communication from that perspective. There is a full report that's accessible. It's about 250 pages long, not quite as long as some of the pieces that Nick brings forward, but all of the data is there. And for those who are in this sector, it's filled with the correct information that they need to take forward. As a part of our marketing rollout, we're working with EcoStrat to speak directly to industries, investors, foreign direct investors, who are primarily interested in this particular kind of development, and it will spark other innovations. There are innovations already underway in Nova Scotia, specifically working with Greenspring and doing some beta testing and affiliation with Michelin, et cetera. So there are many other potential uses in addition to the fuel stock component. So we're just on the cusp of exploring these pieces and stepping in. But the good news is the rating is done. We have an A rating, we have a supply, we have a transportation infrastructure, and we have an economic zone within the Lunenburg Queens area that continues to look at a lens for potential growth and collaboration.
It's exciting.
It is. It is.
I know it's probably something that people should kind of read for themselves and ask questions. I know that I saw some folks just thought this meant there'd be more clear cutting, but it's not. It's about finding more uses for the residuals.
Right.
Like, we need lumber because if you want to build a house, you need lumber. But from that process, there's a lot left over, and it's about finding uses for that leftover that actually drives the economy where we all benefit.
And we have a forestry sector who has been struggling because they have this residual byproduct and no market to unload it and to help reinvest in their infrastructure and their organizations. The forestry sector continues to be one of the most significant economic drivers within our Nova Scotian economy. Mm-hmm. This will help support the diversification. And the scientific side of all of this is really quite unique in that it helps to attract a new section of economic development through a lens that might not have been part of the traditional approach, and will become more efficient in our full cycle use of a natural resource, which is the management of it is certainly considered exceptional and a standard to follow internationally based on what we're doing here in Nova Scotia. So it's to support an existing, very important piece of our economy as an industry, but also look at what else can we do with these residual pieces that will help drive a cleaner economy along the way.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate your presentation, your explanation for the public for something that might just have kind of slipped through the cracks, and we should be celebrating this. That's
exactly.
great.
So the media release has been issued. We've not had the opportunity to extend that announcement within our own local media, but we're hoping to achieve that, and we'll continue to build out. Greenspring is hosting the Atlantic Region's Biodiversity Conference in Halifax and St. Mary's later this spring. We'll be looking at participating actively there. Again, drawing in more insight about what is the potential, where are the alliances, and helping to advocate that we have an A rating and that we're interested in collaborations and exploring possibilities.
That's great.
Okay.
Any questions for? No? Great.
Terrific.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to the end of our agenda. We do have an in-camera meeting following this under Section 22(2)C of the Municipal Government Act for personnel matters. Thank you for adding that on there, Amanda. So without further ado, I have a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Tanner, seconded by Councillor Coughlin. We are adjourned.